all the listeners, as we bring you once again a positive aspect of our positive channel, NZ World News, which always tries to bring positive feedback, positive messages, and positive experiences of people that they are able to share with us and give us their perspective. So today we have got a special guest and a very lovely person, Jessica Rose, who happens to be an Auckland Council board member. So I'm going to actually ask her to introduce about her, but I can only tell one thing, that yes, it's a very important job at the moment for all the councils, for all the government agencies who works closely with the communities and people. And I had the pleasure today to actually talk to one of the board members who is already making some differences through their channel of council. Now she's going to talk about herself, and I'm going to ask her a few things about how she has experienced this pre-COVID and COVID and post-COVID, and we are still struggling with this uncertain times. So Jessica Rose is a very, very community-driven, very positive-driven person. And what more could I have asked than to interview with me or have a conversation with me? So over to Jessica Rose.
All right.
Jessica, tell us something.
Okay, so thank you so much for the opportunity to have a talk about this wonderful topic that's just such an important piece of how we want to experience our communities and how we want to connect with each other in a really positive light, looking forward and taking things out of experiences that we've had. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I thought I'd take a moment to maybe discuss the journey on how I ended up in a local board position. That might be some people.
Yeah. Tell me something about like who you are, where you come from, what exactly are you doing, and then how you are connected with the communities. Really, I would love to know that.
It's been a very interesting journey, and it's come from a lot of different directions. I, as a younger person, lived in lots of different towns across Aotearoa, from South Island right to East Island. Quite a diversity of experience in different towns and different climates around the area, but I've primarily been in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland since my early teens. And so that's really me in a space that I've felt really close to. Another thing that's been a really strong theme throughout my upbringing is I have a really genuine love of people, being around people. I'm an extroverted person, but I'm also a people person, so I really enjoy humanity and community. I've always been someone who's been quite strong about organising people, and I've spent a lot of time clearing my time to bring people together over positive topics or activities. It's something that I've dedicated a lot of my free time to, and haven't, in an unpaid sort of position. It's something I've enjoyed doing is organising.
Yes, absolutely.
These sorts of things have been extremely relevant moving into the position that I'm in. So I had lots of jobs in my 20s and that sort of thing. Usually working in offices, just doing sort of office jobs, not really a specific career path, which is probably an interesting point. I did study at university, but I did that as a young adult out of school, and in that I studied anthropology, which is the study of humans, social behaviour, cultural behaviours. Anthropology is also what owns sort of human history. So archaeology, which people are quite familiar with, Indiana Jones, and that sort of thing. That's all a part of anthropology too. So I studied social and cultural anthropology, and that really sort of explains how people behave and how they behave in groups and as society cultures, which was very interesting and extremely useful to the role that I'm in now, and also extremely useful to obviously the change of living that we've been experiencing over the last 12 months. So that was really, I think that's an important thing to bring up, is that cultural anthropology has a lot, has a good foundational scholarly basis for understanding people and their behaviours. I just loved doing it. I didn't choose to. I didn't know much about anthropology before then. It was a course that I'd taken sort of to try it out, and then it ended up becoming a major. So that was really good. I also, I guess in my scholarly history, I have a postgraduate in human resource management and business. So again, it's really
Wow.
how people work in an organised way. It has a lot of strong similarities with the anthropological under. Because when we look at workplaces and how people connect within those organised structures, there's certainly, and I mean this relates to things like personal development, but also absolutely, people's behavioural understanding around change or around new things, or managing people's well-being.
That's okay. So now, just touching on that, like you were saying, like with the background and with the graduation that you did, and with the humanitarian aspect, and the humanity is quite important during this time, and particularly what more better than to prove that you are human, or that to prove these situations like this for you to rise and thing. And again, having attached with the local council and the local board, basically the Auckland Council, which is one of the biggest council and also one of the prominent for people to serve. So in terms of that, tell me something, or tell us something about like how was your transition during this pre-COVID and COVID time, when everyone needed the most to act and react fast. And then humanity is the major core aspect of your studies and of your life journey that you were passionate about. What really made difference for you? Was it like, what was the experience? Give us that experience that you had.
I think some of the really important things about being on a local board and being that sort of community anchor point, or somewhere people can ask questions, is that a lot of people experience things differently and they react differently. And I think we can see that based on something as simple as, say, wearing a mask on public transport, and that makes some people feel that they don't. Some people are very happy to comply with that. They can see a greater picture. They can see the health and well-being elements. For some other people, they feel suspicious. Some other people can feel controlled. And so what may seem like a really, really simple thing that's a positive way to act, actually, quite a few people have different reactions. And even in a bigger scale picture, we can kind of expand that out to other cultures when we consider some people would wear face coverings as a normal cultural behavior, and how changing views around wearing face coverings and when they're appropriate, when they're not appropriate, or why people would think they are. But it's very important in a wide community that has a lot of diverse peoples and beliefs. To sort of, it can really bring those conversations up, or maybe it should bring those conversations up more about, about how you can, a lot of behaviors that people can do, we could probably accept them a lot more and be a lot more positive and inclusive about things. And that people already wearing face coverings, and whether that's somebody who we'll often see face coverings on people who've come from cities where there's quite high pollution. So that's just a norm, a behavioural thing to do outside of the house, or additionally people who are doing it for religious reasons. So we have these sort of things that are really quite common outside of a specific country. So bringing that idea in here, but also some people's ideas are that their freedoms are being impinged on, or that they don't really understand how it could really help. And I think that's an important one that can show the interesting elements that people can bring to a story, but also the shared learnings everyone can get out of it. I think another one was public and shared green spaces. So I guess two things. One is being confined to a household over this time, challenge for a lot of people. We've got a lot of members of the community who live in households where they are the only occupant. So you've got one person, so that would make it quite a difficult or lonely experience. Other people where there's multiple people in a household, and potentially there's too many people for the shared spaces. So you've got people in flatting situations where a household with people who potentially aren't members necessarily of your family, whom this works at a scale where people are going in and out of the house and sharing, but now you've got to have your workplace in a really confined area, and there's a lot of people who need to work in that space. So some really interesting differences around how people manage themselves in isolation in their households, and there was difficulties, that range from to overpopulation. But on top of that, I think the really exciting positives that came out of that were a real community building external to the household. So having these popping out into their driveways, having big social distancing, but talking to each other across the street, you know, defined on basis. And I think Anzac Day was a really good example of that. From a place thing, that's a very important occasion to pay respect and to and to not be able to go to sites necessarily. You know, that was a real challenge. People were able to pay respects in their driveway, and I think that was quite important. You know, people could step outside, you could look down the street, so people still got to observe an important occasion, but they also did that in a safe way. And that was about managing the positivity and managing the needs as well as managing the risk. And you know, so I think that those sorts of things are really, really interesting. You know, how a community can react when life is changing around them, or when, you know, there are different situations occurring outside of their control, but still wanting to do things that they might consider normal or balanced. And I think that closeness, that sort of bringing life back to the street, around communities and neighbours, that potentially hasn't been something that people have done as much of, you know, in the last couple of decades. People have sort of become more in the community. It was a great way of, I think the other thing was people were at home again at similar times. People were home all the time, but it meant that if you did go for a walk, you were likely to see people in their front yards. That didn't make too much of a difference, and it allowed those opportunities to say hi and to
simple things.
Really little, but I think even, you know, anyone can really, I think, agree that sometimes just seeing someone and them saying hi to you makes a big difference to your day, whether that's someone you know or someone you don't know.
Absolutely.
So such a little connection point, just a hi. What COVID sort of did was really brought that community spirit back into a community where you did start saying hi, or people might have connected with people they hadn't before because of the shared experience. And I think those things are so integral and so positive, and you know, it's something that would be great that if we could keep on doing and not let go of. Like I do feel that that's one of the excellent outcomes, is the real on the ground getting to know people and having the kindness and consideration. People were quite a lot more patient with each other, I think, understanding all, you know, stages of their journey and how they were feeling about a situation. There was a lot more kindness, and I think that was really, then it really shined through, and it would be good for that to continue.
So what were the changes for you as a person, for you personally, that impacted, that you think that during COVID you did change your life, or you did change, but you were not like maybe initially happy, maybe not happy, but eventually you were happy, or you said that this is best thing that has happened? How was your journey turned out due to this situation? Is there anything that you could highlight, something of your own experiences that affected you?
I think some things that were, well, my personal experience was really with workplaces. I juggle two jobs. The board job's a part-time role, and I guess to my age and to my financial needs, I need to have a second job as well to support the so I have two part-time jobs, so I work a lot of the time. And from a personal perspective, one thing that really made an impact on me was, although I've been capable of working online as we are now, making video recording, although that technology has been available, it's not something that lots of people were familiar with. And I think chances to do things online, for me, it was incredibly useful. It meant that I didn't have to skip a beat. It meant that I could do innovations. You know, by day 2, I'd organised a quiz night with some friends who we normally go out to do. And so it meant we didn't have to stop. And it meant that we could still work, we could still be productive, we could still socialise, we could still teach, we could still learn, we could still connect. And that's something, again, that I think, like, it was really important for me, because in addition to that, with two jobs, often going to like going to a location, there's two elements of this, and one of them is a time investment involved in traveling from spaces, which can sometimes mean that there's things that just can't get done because you can't get from here to there and still be there in time sometimes. So that makes a difference. In addition to that, there's also a commute cost that relates to emissions, and I'm very, very active in conservation. I'm a climate
activist.
Yeah, so I'm definitely very concerned about our lived environment, and so for me, to reduce emissions, even on these short, point-to-point trips, those all add up. And so a journey part for me was absolutely moving to online, and it doesn't meet up in person, but it does mean you can schedule things a little better to make things work that otherwise might not. And then the learning platforms, this example here means people who might not be able to be at a place at a certain time because of the other constraints can actually do that at a later time when it suits them. So we get to store learning, we get to share learning, and too. I know that, again, part of my journey prior to this happening, one of the reasons I was able to end up in the local board positions or in these community positions, I've done a lot of learning online. I've done a lot of watching documentaries, and I've done a lot of Auckland conversations, started, I think, 2017, and they're free lectures about important topics to our city. And I couldn't go to those, or when I found out about it, there were ones I hadn't seen. They're recorded. You can go to the history, and then you can re-watch things and learn about them in your own time and your own pace. And I just think COVID's really helped hear that with a lot of people at once, and it's done a big disruption and step change in those tools and those technologies. And it's certainly something that, again, I think that is hugely positive, and I think it's something that we would want to, we don't want to lose it. We don't want to. It's great that we can all go out and talk to each other, but I think that deprioritizing and going back to status quo of everybody traveling to every meeting all the time, I don't think that's a good way forward. I think the things that we learned are the way forward and are post-COVID.
So you've been committed now to adjust and accept and adapt to the new norms that we have created ourselves. So that's a good one. Yeah, that's definitely not me. Don't want to go back to the old status quo or norm that we want to now. If we have created something new, we should adopt it and we should take it further.
I think so.
Absolutely. 100% agree on that. So in terms of, Jessica, coming to the making a difference or making an impact to yourself or to around you, and as a personal and in person as well, that how you think this whole new norms have impacted you, that you feel initially strange, but then now good, and then say that, okay, now this, I can do this at my leisure time, or this, I can do it at any time. Give us some kind of insights on what have you changed yourself in terms of your routines or in terms of your making things happen differently.
Yeah, it's I feel like, well, I do feel like I can do more things and also have time for myself. So I do have a good positive, a better work-life balance. And I think that, that's something that's really come out. I'm much more committed to, I'm actually much more committed to that balance. I was really giving a lot of myself primarily and predominantly just to workplace. And freedom has given me an opportunity to actually, like, for example, working from home as opposed to going to an office. I permanently changed things so that I work from home 50% of the week and I go to location 50%. Whereas before it was probably closer to 10%, 90%, like 90%.
Right.
And this hasn't impacted my productivity at all. In fact, it's probably increased it. But I can now also dedicate things to projects that I want to do at home. I'm learning, I should say.
Okay.
Gardening. So I'm really interested in food sustainability. I'm really interested in soil health. I'm really interested in water care. That's something I've been interested in for some time. We've had Another thing that's affected us has been, you know, our control on how much water people can use because of rainfall.
Absolutely.
One of the things I was able to do in my job on local council is be influential in the consenting and planning for people to be allowed to have on-site water storage at their households. So I'm really proud of that and really proud to have been able to be instrumental in that outcome. It's very important.